Hi Aaron, in your video you cover about three main topics, and I wanted to address each of them.
Ayn Rand believes in libertarianism. She is not a libertarian per se. She believes that the political belief of libertarianism cannot exist without all the other wings of philosophy of which she believes in. And therefore, for people that say she is not a libertarian, she does believe in the fundamental values of libertarianism.
I think the first response to that would be that Rand's philosophy pre-existed what we know today to be libertarianism. By libertarianism today, we typically mean either anarcho-capitalism, or we mean sort of minimal government that protects life, liberty, and property. The genesis, though, of the modern libertarian movement and subsequently the party actually post-dates Rand's philosophy. And I think if you look back, you'll find that Rand, who had established in writing her philosophy in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, was later found in the company of economists such as Murray Rothbard. Rothbard was for a very short time, a part of Ayn Rand's inner circle. And he and she parted company quite early in their relationship. He took Rand's non-aggression principle, which is found in her political philosophy. The basic political principle of the Objectivist ethics is, no man may initiate the use of physical force against others. Ayn Rand, Ethics in Our Time, 1961, reproduced in The Virtue of Selfishness as the Objectivist ethics, and presented it to the public as an axiom. In other words, something that is self-evident, that not only need not be proven, but cannot be proven, because it is self-evident. In other words, how can you prove that a leaf is green? Well, you look at it, and when it's green, it's green. There's no way to prove greenness other than to view it with your own eyes. The libertarian creed rests upon one central axiom, that no man or group of men may aggress against the person or property of anyone else. This may be called the non-aggression axiom. Murray Rothbard, The Libertarian Manifesto, 1972. When you present, the non-aggression principle as though it's an axiom, what you're implying is that you ended up with this non-aggression axiom without first getting there through any metaphysical philosophy or epistemological philosophy or ethical philosophy. In fact, you're putting it out there as though it's metaphysically given. And that is entirely flawed. Now, Rothbard himself and other noteworthy libertarians, including Walter Block, have made it clear that for them, and I think for most of the libertarian movement, libertarianism is a movement built on a strategy, not on a philosophy. In other words, the strategy is to pull together as many people who say or believe that they support individual liberty. Whether they think that comes from minimal government that defends life, liberty, and property, or whether they think that comes from having no government at all, whether they think that rights are God-given, or whether they think that they're natural, or whether they think that there's no such thing as rights, but that utilitarianism brings them to libertarianism. Whatever. The Rothbardian approach was to bring everybody together who believed for one reason or another that they wanted more liberty, and for any given reason, any philosophical underpinning, or none at all, to bring those people all together under one tent, call that tent libertarianism, and then have a political movement that hopefully would then fight for greater liberty. Libertarianism, per se, does not offer a comprehensive way of life or system of ethics. Libertarianism does not talk about virtue in general, simply because it is not equipped to do so. Libertarianism is a coalition of adherents from all manner of philosophic or non-philosophic positions, including emotivism, hedonism, Kantian a priorism, and many others. My own position grounds libertarianism on a natural rights theory embedded in a wider system of Aristotelian-Lockean natural law and a realist ontology and metaphysics. But although those of us taking this position believe that it only provides a satisfactory groundwork and basis for individual liberty, this is an argument within the libertarian camp about the proper basis and grounding of libertarianism, rather than about the doctrine itself. Murray Rothbard, Frank S. Meyer, the fusionist, as libertarian monkey. And subsequent to that, the establishment of that libertarian movement, came the establishment in the early 70s of the Libertarian Party in the United States. The only real linchpin of libertarianism is this non-aggression principle presented as an axiom. It's presented as an axiom so that Rothbard and everybody else could dispense with any strife among so-called libertarians concerning how you get to that axiom. Now, it's not that Ayn Rand ascribed to libertarian beliefs. There were no libertarian beliefs per se when she was writing about her philosophy. Those came later and were in fact shed from her philosophy. Now, every libertarian will say they've come to libertarianism in their own way. And you'll find, clusters of people who share, theories on why libertarianism is the right way to go. It's not to say that all libertarians lack a metaphysical, epistemological, or ethical philosophy. It is to say that libertarianism, the movement itself, is not philosophical. It is rather strategic. Now, it's worthwhile and directly on point to quote Rand when it comes to her beliefs about the libertarian movement and the subsequent Libertarian Party. In an article called Brief Summary in an issue of the Objectivist newsletter in 1971, she wrote, "I disapprove of, disagree with, and have no connection with the latest aberration of some conservatives, the so-called, quote, hippies of the right, unquote, who attempt to snare the younger or more careless ones of my readers by claiming simultaneously to be followers of my philosophy and advocates of anarchism. Anyone offering such a combination confesses his inability to understand either. Anarchism is the most irrational, anti-intellectual notion ever spun by the concrete-bound, context-dropping, whim-worshipping fringe of the collectivist movement, where it properly belongs." Now there she's discussing anarchism in particular, but she was doing it in the context of a discussion of libertarianism, and she was saying that, and she was saying rightly, that many libertarians are anarchists. Just look at YouTube, for example, and there's a host of people who call themselves both anarchists and libertarians. That's not to imply that every person who identifies as libertarian considers himself an anarchist. They could be a minarchist. It's simply to say that she was not off base in criticizing anarchism and its connection with libertarianism. Now, in an essay called What Can One Do?, which appeared in the book Philosophy, Who Needs It?, Rand said, quote, "Above all, do not join the wrong ideological groups or movements in order to, quote, do something, unquote. By, quote, ideological, unquote, in this context, I mean groups or movements proclaiming some vaguely generalized, undefined, and usually contradictory political goals. Example, the Conservative Party, which subordinates reason to faith and substitutes theocracy for capitalism. Or the, quote, libertarian, unquote, hippies, who subordinate reason to whims and substitute anarchism for capitalism. To join such groups means to reverse the philosophical hierarchy and to sell out fundamental principles for the sake of some superficial political action which is bound to fail. It means that you help the defeat of your ideas and the victory of your enemies." So there's a few key things there. She's saying don't join the wrong groups. She didn't say don't join groups at all. She was referring to groups that reverse the philosophical hierarchy. Well, that's exactly what you do when you take a political principle, i.e., in this case, the non-aggression principle, and present it as an axiom. Again, there you're making it metaphysical. So you're reversing the hierarchy. You're presenting a political principle as though it's a metaphysical given. So she's referring specifically there to libertarianism, and she's saying that it is reversing the philosophical hierarchy. Now in that quote she continues and says, "For a discussion of the reasons, see, quote, The Anatomy of Compromise, unquote, in my book, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal." The key passage in Anatomy of Compromise, to which Rand was implicitly referring, is as follows, quote, "In any collaboration between two men or two groups who hold different basic principles, it is the more evil or irrational one who wins. When opposite basic principles are clearly and openly defined, it works to the advantage of the rational side. When they are not clearly defined, but are hidden or evaded, it works to the advantage of the irrational side." By blurring all of the distinctions that got one to the non-aggression principle, by effectively presenting that principle as an axiom and blurring out all of the underlying metaphysics and epistemology and ethics upon which she based that principle, by blurring it out or evading it, as she says, by saying it's not important why, you should value this principle, but that everyone should just agree with it and this is axiomatic. By doing that, you are in fact serving the irrational side. And when you collaborate with people who in fact have, you may evade discussion of them, you may avoid identifying them, but when you collaborate with people whose underlying ethics or epistemology or metaphysics are different from yours, when you collaborate with them, it is the irrational side that wins. You might be familiar with the example Rand gives of the mugger and the mugged. The mugger has something to gain by using force against an innocent person to obtain their money. The money is what he's obtaining. But the innocent person has no reason or no advantage in using force against the mugger. The mugger has nothing to offer. And so it is when, rational egoists collaborate with utilitarians and pragmatists and moral relativists and mystics and etc. All they are doing is helping out irrationality. They're sacrificing their own values, and the only winner of that can be irrationality. When the rational give up rationality, the winner is irrationality. And that's why the libertarian movement, which is just a strategy really for bringing together a larger number of people who claim to love liberty or want liberty, is bound to fail, as she says, because you're bringing together people who have everything to lose with people who have nothing to lose. You're bringing together rational people with irrational people. And the thing that's on the auction block there, the thing that's being sacrificed, is rationality, a commitment to reality, reason, and rational egoism. That's what's on the chopping block.